Marcus, how's your trade going?
Really good, Sean. Are we recording? Obviously.
Yes, we are recording. I thought I lost you for a second. I was like, where'd he go?
You, yeah, I have to admit my connection is a little bit unstable. I don't know why. We were talking a little bit just now and it was fine, but
Yeah.
it seems to be recovering again.
Okay.
Yeah, going good, Sean, as always, and coming to you today from Medellin, Colombia. Loving it out here, man.
La ciudad de la eterna primavera, or something like that. Maybe it's la primavera eterna. We'll find out. Okay, so
The
everybody,
city of eternal spring. Yeah.
eternal spring, eternal spring. Welcome everybody to Bitcoiners Guide. We are your hosts, Plan Marcus and Big Sean Harris. This is the show that we wish we would have had when we first started learning about Bitcoin. So we made it for you. The current price, we're gonna do a little price timestamp so everyone can get in. We're probably going to release 2 episodes this week. So if you're listening in yesterday, we will probably have released last week's, and then today we're releasing today's episode. So it's a Bitcoiners Guide fest. Today is currently Tuesday, September 6th, 10:40 a.m. in the Mountain Standard Time. The current price of Bitcoin is $19,700 and some change, currently down about 0.49% in the last 24 hours. So Bitcoin's been doing this sideways chop like always, sitting right around $20,000, which were the 2017 highs. And it's looking like it's the 2022 lows. So remember, Bitcoin's price, it always hits higher highs and it always hits higher lows. So we're sitting around the highs of last cycle's high, and we're in this cycle's low. So Marcus and I were talking before, and we wanted to do the Bitcoiners Guide Tip of the Week, which is sponsored by the Halving Party 2024 in El Salvador. Do not miss it. It's going to be insane. All the plebs are going to be there. It's Bitcoin only, no altcoiners allowed, and it's going to be awesome. So make sure you're there. Tickets are not on sale yet. We're kind of waiting to get a little bit closer to the halving until we make those live. So Bitcoiners Guide Tip of the Week is today. We're going to call this Ghost of 2014's Past. Ooh. Marcus, are you still with me? Or has your internet?
I'm still here, dude.
Okay.
No, I didn't. Sure. I didn't go. I didn't ghost you, dude.
You didn't ghost me. So let's get into what we're talking about when we're talking about the ghost of 2014's past. So we wanted to paint a picture. We're currently in 2022. We know that there's a halving about every 4 years. Currently, we've seen these halvings that have gone up, maybe 20, the halvings, they happen in the last halvings happened in 2012, then 2016, and then the recent halving happened in 2020. So what had happened in 2012? There was a halving, there was a run up. Well, there's actually a double top in 2013, and then it went down in 2014. The blow off top is what we call it. The price of Bitcoin blew off top in 2014. The same thing happened.
Out of my head, it went up to like $1,200 in 2013. It came back all the way down to something like $300. Then from $300, it went up to 20,000. Came all the way back down to, let's say, $3,000, or just below 4,000.
Yep.
And then from 4,000 went all the way up to 69,000, and then went all the way back down to, let's say, 17,000. And is this the bottom? Was it the bottom?
We don't know, right? We don't know if this is the bottom or not, but that's what we're going to talk about today. Not necessarily the bottom, but we're going to talk about how do you get your, like, what are the ghosts of 2014? What are the ghosts of 2018 when we bottomed out? What are they telling you now in 2022? And what would you be telling as a ghost of 2022? What would you be telling the future Bitcoiners that are coming in 2026, when it may or may not bottom out. So it's a very interesting topic, and something that we wanted to speak on, because Marcus is class of 2017. I'm class of 2019. I'd been watching the price run up in 2017, and then I watched it fall in 2018. I had no clue what I was looking at. Finally, I started buying in 2019 once it started making more sense to me. And then I went really hard because it finally clicked. So a lot of times when you get into Bitcoin, you're just buying a little at a time, which is great. But eventually you got to build up a stack, right? And if Bitcoin is what we all think it's going to be, which is the future of money, the best money ever created, and obviously that's going to take some reading, it's going to take some study to understand why. And we can talk about why. We should talk about why on a future episode. And we've talked about why on previous episodes. We haven't just brought it all together. But if Bitcoin is the best money ever created, one day that means that we will all be working for it or be paying it for things in it. It'll be a Bitcoin circular economy, kind of like a little bit of what we're seeing in El Salvador. And so the question is, if you can get it for cheap now, should you not get as much as what you can get? And obviously the answer is yes, but we want to talk about why and how to wrap your mind around it if you're new or if you're older. So Marcus, what have we been talking about kind of offline before this?
Yeah, I think we were kind of talking about, for me, it's been like it's come full cycle, right? Like, and apparently it was, I already did a full cycle when I didn't realize I did, because at some point, you don't know it was a blow off top, or you didn't know it was a top until you're like 6 months later and you realize, oh, that was the top, and like now we're like in the depths of the bear market. So I can say, just having come in just before the blow off top in 2017, came in late. It was like October 2017 that I got in. And and how do the cycles like actually affect you? Because I can honestly say that I'm in a different place right now in my thinking about Bitcoin as well. But obviously also, what's Bitcoin, where Bitcoin has come. It's like I've been stacking hard all throughout, like basically late 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. And then all of a sudden, like you go through this new cycle and Bitcoin jumps to a new level, because, even though we're really low right now, 20K, I've experienced Bitcoin below 4K, and at that point you're just like a regular pleb, or at least I was, and stuck into a 9-to-5 job, hoping to get out someday, hoping to retire, hoping to pay off my house by the time I retire, or at least paid off enough of it so I can can actually own something. And everything felt like unsure. I always knew my pension was just going to be worthless, even though you got to pay for that pension every month. But anyway, so how do these cycles change you? And I remember coming in 2017, and you see these guys like American Hodl and all these guys who've been around from like 2013 or even 2012 or 2014, 2015. You're always like, oh, dude, I wish I got into Bitcoin when it was like still $300. Like imagine Bitcoin at $300. I would buy the hell out of it, right? But then I wonder, how was it for them when it was at $300? Because Bitcoin was it wasn't sure then either that we were going to go to 10K, 20K, 100K, $1 million, even though, everybody looks at it from where they are. And people always think, well, now it's going to be diminishing returns and I've already missed the run. But, Bitcoin seems to keep doing its thing. Even though, the diminishing return things is maybe something we are seeing. I'm interested to hear your views on that. I mean, I remember in 2018, 2017, I think it was McAfee, John McAfee. He was like, he made that statement about, Bitcoin is going to go to $1 million or math itself fails, and I'll eat my dick if it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, it hasn't gone there yet, but it did set like a sort of expectation, and then last cycle it was like, we're going to go to 100K for sure, and we didn't go. So I'm kind of curious if like plebs coming in right now are maybe less bullish on the future of Bitcoin. If you come in 2017 and you think, hey, if I can, like get a Bitcoin together or maybe a couple of them, and it's going to go to like $1 million, like my life will be really good. So how is it for a pleb that comes in right now? Because we also talked about this, Sean. It's like there was some survey done in different countries, and you have like this bell curve of people. Of course, there's always millionaires and exceptions, people who put in very little or just like immediately can just put down $1 million. But I'm not talking about those. We're just talking about plebs, right? So like your average household, your common man is just like him, and if you have a partner, your partner or her, whatever, they'll if both are working, you pull in a certain amount of money. And again, we're talking about the Western world because that's where we're from, either Europe or the US. I'm sorry, like here in Colombia, it would be completely different because the income levels are really different. But I think most of our listeners will be from the States or Europe. So having said that, let's say, most people work 9 to 5, and they did this survey, by the way. And the point of the survey was what I found remarkable is like something like around 10 to 15% of people had bought some cryptocurrency, not even only Bitcoin. But then when they asked about what amount did they invest, it was a couple of $100. So let's say $200, $250. So to me, that was like, oh my God, only 250. It's like, that's not going to be life changing. Even if Bitcoin like 4x's or 5x's, you go from $250 to owning a little over $1,000. That's nice. It's fun, but that's not, at least to me, that's not like the opportunity that I came for in Bitcoin. But at the same time, that is what the numbers say. And also going through a cycle and seeing what Bitcoin is and what it does, a lot of times people need that time and experience to really get Bitcoin, to understand what it does and where it's going, to then really understand and see the opportunity and understand, quote unquote, the risk, because I prefer to call it the opportunity than the risk. I mean, there's a risk of not being in Bitcoin, of missing the boat.
Yes.
And after you've been in Bitcoin for a while, and for me, coming in late 2017, it was really like early 2019 that I really started to grasp Bitcoin, because before that I was like just buying blockchain stuff. I didn't really get it.
Anything with the blockchain.
And then only after 2019 it changed me, in that sense that I was really like, oh my God, this might be like the biggest opportunity of my life, right? And then even though I had bought Bitcoin before, only then I really started going hard, as in selling my car and doing all kind of crazy stuff to just get as much Bitcoin as I can.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then,
go ahead.
Yeah, and then, the other thing we were talking about is like, okay, so what about the people who bought in 2014 already, right? Like, imagine if you had $250 invested then, it would have bought you one Bitcoin. Yeah. So now still have $20,000.
Yeah.
And for some, I think for a lot of people, that's maybe not life changing, but I think a lot of people would be really, really happy with $20,000. And if you went a little bit harder than only buying one Bitcoin for $250, but you actually managed to put a couple of $1,000 in there, wow, then you could have been like having something like 10 Bitcoin right now, which would have made you like a millionaire somewhere in 2021 briefly. And what did that do for your conviction in 2017, right? After you saw the run-up go to 20,000. and then it coming back down to 3K, and then you're like, whoa, this thing is going to go to 100K, you know. So the buyer from 2014 probably went really hard in 2019 as well, if he didn't have enough Bitcoin yet. And then by now, if that Bitcoiner did go hard and had like 50 Bitcoin at some point, then yeah, what does that do to somebody, some pleb from 2013 or 2014 who now has like 50 to 100 Bitcoin? I doubt that they're still stacking as hard as they were, you know, during those first two bear markets.
Yeah. So here, I totally agree. There's a lot of things that you touched on, right? I think the first thing that you got to think about is why am I stacking Bitcoin, right? Like, what is the whole reason why I'm buying Bitcoin? Because we have to recognize that as Bitcoin maximalists, which I would consider both of us, we are more all in than your average person. Most people have, you know, a diversified portfolio, which is very stupid if you don't have a lot of wealth, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense to diversify if you don't have a significant amount of wealth. If you're trying to gain or build wealth, you should actually consolidate, but you should study what you're consolidating on. Because you don't have that much.
What do you mean? What do you mean consolidate?
You want to consolidate your portfolio. You don't want to have.
What does that mean?
It means instead of spreading yourself thin on everything, you want to zone in on one or two things and consolidate in on one or two things and invest in one or two things or save in one or two things, but things that you've studied and you've done the research and that you have a very good idea that they have an asymmetrical bet to them, right? So like the volatility of Bitcoin, it just goes back to the volatility of Bitcoin. When you're new or you don't know much about it or you're no coiner, you go, well, Bitcoin's volatile. But then you look at maximalists and they go, yeah, that's like one of the best parts about it is if you want to create wealth, you can't put your money in something that's not volatile, because it has to inherently, you want it to be volatile, but just to the upside. But if it's going to be volatile to the upside, you have to be able to stomach the volatility to the downside as well. And that's what we're stomaching right now with Bitcoin, is the volatility to the downside. But just because you're stomaching that, right, that doesn't mean that the volatility to the upside will come. You have to make sure that what you've put your money in is actually something that's real, that's good, that has fundamentals that are sound, which Bitcoin has all of those things. So then it goes, okay, well, the reward for me stomaching the volatility to the downside is me getting that volatility to the upside, which Bitcoin over its lifetime has always been more volatile to the upside than it has to the downside. If that weren't the case, then at some point during one of these cycles, then the price would start going down. So it's always been more volatile to the upside. It's never been more volatile, volatile to the downside over its lifespan, which is really cool to think about. There's just been more and more adoption, more people understanding what it is, more people fixing more and more problems that people have. And you know, there's a multitude of problems that it fixes, whether that's remittances, cross-border payments, whether it's the melting ice cube, you know, whether it's finding an internet native currency, finding a currency that can't,
whether it's money debasement.
Yeah, money. Yeah, that's the melting ice cube, right? Or whether it's just like, hey, I need permissionless money. I need money that my government can't take from me. So it solves a multitude of problems. Now the question is, why are you buying it, right? Are you buying it because you want to just buy a new mountain bike? Are you buying it because you want to pay off your parents' mortgage? Are you buying it because you fell into some debt and you want to be able to pay off your debt? What is the reason that you're buying Bitcoin? And that's the big question. And I would say I'm buying Bitcoin because I want to be free. That's the reason why I'm buying Bitcoin. And if you only have $500 of Bitcoin, I don't know if that will ever necessarily make you free, but it's a great start. It's a great start. And
the joke is, just to jump in on that, on a long enough time scale, it will, at least for that 2014 pleb, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
They're getting pretty damn close, you know. Like if you bought $500 worth of Bitcoin at $300, you know, you've got 1.6 Bitcoin. Well, maybe you're not there. Maybe you're not there yet, but you know, you can, you know, definitely for like a Colombian pleb.
Yes.
Right.
And I want to be sensitive too, because I know that everyone comes from different economic backgrounds.
Yeah, and I don't want to generalize. I'm sorry, I don't want to insult any Colombians either, because I'm here in Medellin.
Yeah.
And I just want to say it's a way more modern city than I ever expected. I'm seeing some really beautiful cars here as well. You know, it's not poor. It's not like all beaten up cars only. There's some serious businesses going on here. So I don't want to generalize, but, you know, people, I think you feel the gist of it, you know.
Yeah, but overall, right? Like if we're talking
the cost of living is a lot lower here.
Yes. If we're talking about Europe, America, United States of America, Canada, those type of countries, there is like for your average pleb, it's easier to save money and bigger quantities of money compared to the rest of the world. Which, is that fair? I don't know if that's fair. It's just the world that we live in, right? In Australia too. So it's just the world that we live in. And I want to be sensitive too, because some people might say, dude, $500 is a ton of money for me. So I get that. But what I'm saying is, for most people, if they're buying 200 or 300 or 400, if $500 of Bitcoin is all that they've ever bought in their whole life, the majority of these people are going to sell their Bitcoin way before it ever could become life-changing money, way before it could ever really give them that true freedom. That's what I'm trying to get at, is if you're only buying small quantities in an American sense, then you're not really going, or in Europe or whatever you are, then you're probably going to sell way before it could ever change your life, because you don't have the conviction yet. And it takes conviction to buy big quantities of Bitcoin, and to not just buy, but to go, look, I realize that I'm in an opportunity, and this is the opportunity of a lifetime. And this opportunity, really probably the best opportunity that anyone in the world has ever received. Even now, Bitcoin at $20,000, it's probably the best, besides Bitcoin at $1, Bitcoin at $3, whatever. If you throw out Bitcoin at $20,000 may be the best opportunity that the world has ever seen. And so if you gain that conviction, then not only will that lead you to saving more money in Bitcoin, but it will also lead you to working and getting and figuring out how to get more money so you can buy more Bitcoin. And I think that's like what we're trying to say, is the ghost of 2014 is shouting at you, Bitcoin at $20,000 is the Bitcoin at $300. And the ghost of 2018 is shouting at you, Bitcoin at $20,000 is the Bitcoin at $3,000, right? And you'll be shouting at 2026, your Bitcoin at your bottom, whatever that bottom is, which will be much higher than Bitcoin at $20,000, is Bitcoin at $20,000. And yes, I don't know if we've hit the bottom. So, don't quote me and say, oh, Sean said we hit the bottom at 20,000, and then we have a flash crash to 12K, right? Like, I don't know. But what I'm saying is we're in a somewhat near bottom level, and we have a chance to stack a ton of Bitcoin. And so are you buying to flip it back and make some more dollars, or are you buying to gain true freedom? And that's what I'm saying is, are you stacking hard enough if you're new? Because the dudes in 2014, they've already done a lot of their stacking. The dudes in 2018 have already done a lot of their stacking, the people back then. So are you stacking your balls off right now? And then you go, okay, well, what if you are class of 2014? What if you are class of 2018 and you've been stacking for 8 years or 4 years or 2 years? 3 years. Are you still stacking now? Because we're still in a great stacking environment. So are there diminishing returns? I think the returns are going to be insane. And maybe from cycle to cycle, it might just depend. Some cycles might be crazier than other cycles. That's where I think I've gotten to right now. I don't think that cycles diminish over time, even though that's what it kind of looks like. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do diminish over time. But the way that I look at Bitcoin, it's like, if you look at this last cycle, it's almost like a bearish cycle, even though we went from like $10,000 up to $70,000. Like that, in my mind, that was like a bearish cycle. I think the next cycle could go much higher, like percentage wise. It could do way more than a 7x, or I guess 3,000 to 70,000.
What makes you say that? Just I know people would like to hear
that. What makes me say that is I still think that, the old saying, Bitcoin's been in a bull run since 2009. I honestly think that it's been in a bear run since 2009. Like, if we look at what it can do. So, I guess you could say I'm bullish.
I tend to agree with you that we can see bigger numbers. I'm not sure we will, but I'm just saying, there's still, because I think normal people will look at the graph and, you'll see like this diminishing graph, where it goes up steep in the beginning, and the further time goes, the steepness of the curve goes down a little bit, and the growth, basically, it still grows, but the rate of growth is a little bit slower. That's like how you see a normal. The reason why I think there could still be another acceleration is just the numbers. If you look at like what percentage of the population owns Bitcoin, we're still only at around the 10% mark, So and again, I love to refer back to the adoption of technology curves, or they also call it the diffusion of technology. If you Google that, you get like all these papers written like years and decades ago, studying like how new technology diffuses amongst population. And it seems to always be that once it kicks like this 20 to 30%, of the population using it, it accelerates to like 70% of the population using it. Because you first need, like the early adopters, and then the early majority, and then you get the late majority. And I know we've been saying that for 4 years already. So, 4 years ago, I thought, we're in that early majority. And then people were saying, no, we're still at like the very early adopters, And it actually starts out with like the smallest group, the innovators, which were like the let's call them the tech nerds and cypherpunks. They're really the innovators. Then came like the early adopters, and then you get the early majority, and that's like the whole left side of the bell curve. Well, the whole early majority hasn't even arrived yet, So in that sense, I think we could still see an acceleration. Reasons for me thinking it can't is because, or at least, the FUD or the doubt or whatever, it's like, because you do look at like the market cap, and it's like, okay, if it's like $500 trillion to $1 trillion in market cap now, for it to grow again like 1,000%, that's that takes a lot of money. But at the same time, we also see that, now institutions are really stepping in, and we still haven't heard of, we know Mark Zuckerberg owns some Bitcoin, and we know Jeff Bezos owns some Bitcoin, but we still haven't seen these big corporate companies, which are like, have billions and billions of dollars in cash laying around, like Facebook, like Apple, like Microsoft. They haven't even, stick their little pinky toe in Bitcoin yet. So, there's all these different reasons, and nation state adoption, so it's still like this massive opportunity, and Bitcoiners have been calling for all these things to play out. And if you actually look at the timeline of Bitcoin year over year, we're still hitting all these targets. We're still on this steady course of going there. So,
Yeah, I agree. And I think, right, when we look at it from a purely price standpoint, I think incorrect, because like what we were saying before, it solves a multitude of problems. So when we got into Bitcoin because it was going to make us money, right? And then we learned what Bitcoin really was, what it is. But other people will get into
also
Bitcoin,
what fiat really is,
and what fiat is.
Money.
But other people will get into Bitcoin around the world because it fixes a pain problem for them, right? Whether that's the remittances of like El Salvador or whatever it is, government overreach in their money. So there will be other people that get into Bitcoin, not
countries
because
getting cut off of the SWIFT system, like countries like Russia, Iran, and India and China, they're all, on their toes. And not to forget a lot of African and South American countries that are, kind of like eyeing this as well, all right, maybe we don't have much power as these bigger countries. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, so they'll get into Bitcoin not because they're looking at a chart. They'll get into it because they'll say, look, Bitcoin fixes this problem that I have. Oh, and by the way, it looks like the price goes up. So that's good too. Like that's something that like the number go up will be good, but it won't be the main reason why they get into Bitcoin. And then that will help further push adoption, and it will make number go up.
Right. I agree with you. Like we tend to talk, or at least I still tend to talk in like fiat terms because that's still the world we live in. But I do, and it's always been a challenge, but honestly, I do look at it right now more and more in terms of, okay, like what does my Bitcoin get me? And not in terms of fiat, but just, wow, how does Bitcoin relate to real estate? How do Bitcoin relate to stocks? How do Bitcoin relate to daily groceries? Like how does Bitcoin relate to a car? And what you just got to remember is here we have this ultra scarce asset, 21 million units. It sounds like a lot, 21 million. It's a big number. And if you break it down into Satoshis, it's even more. But 21 million, man, it's so, especially since we're not making any more, it is so incredibly scarce, and it shows you we're living in this, and I still love Jeff Boot for this, it's like in a world of where you have something as scarce as Bitcoin, everything else just becomes abundant, like nothing, everything, real estate compared to Bitcoin is just, we have an abundance of real estate. Like we could build more, endlessly more, looking out into the future, but not going to make any more Bitcoin, let alone there's Bitcoin being lost. Look at fiat. If you want to talk about fiat, I mean, I hear Ricardo Salinas Pliegas, the Mexican billionaire. He talks about, how like the Mexican peso was 20 pesos to the Mexican dollar, and right now there are 20,000 to the dollar, to the US dollar. Here in Colombia, $1 is 4,500 pesos, and they're apparently thinking about removing the zeros again, so they have room to move again. Right now, the euro, honestly, the fact that the euro just lost about 20% against the dollar, and on top of that, this massive energy crisis in Europe, I think Bitcoin, it will force people to take another look at Bitcoin again. I mean, 2020 did that for Michael Saylor.
Yes.
And I've heard a lot of 2020 and 21 plebs that came in because, they realized like what the hell is wrong, with inflation and the money handing out, the government handing out money and printing like up to $9 trillion. And that melting ice cube that they're sitting on, these kind of events are really important. And in history, they keep coming and coming. So I kind of lost the thread of where I was headed.
Yeah, but
I guess
every time there's going to be like a lot of tumultuous times, that just leads more and more people to Bitcoin because Bitcoin will solve their problem. They're going to have some issues. They're going to have problems, and Bitcoin will solve it. And
it's just what I want to get to, Sean, is really just like this feeling of hope, happiness, and freedom, right? Because we yelled out a lot on Twitter, and I love to make like memes about it that try to encapsulate that. And I can never completely capture that feeling that I give. And also in my voice, you'll never hear, because I'm not such a
extrovert, happy person, but inside, dude, like Bitcoin has literally set me free. I've never felt as free, and I've never felt as living in a world of opportunity. While the whole world feels like it's breaking down, like the it's so contradictory. But that's literally when you exit. At least for me, it was. Once I started seeing, having like, once I started. How do I put this? There was this point where I was like, where I realized, oh my God, if I'm not in Bitcoin, that's when I'm worried, because you go from this point of, okay, I'm investing my money into like this volatile asset that, might go to zero, right? It can go to zero, it could go to $1 million. But then at one point I realized, no. It's the other way around, Fiat is guaranteed to go to zero. Yeah. If I wait too long about not getting into Bitcoin or not getting enough Bitcoin, I'm gonna miss out on life.
Yeah.
And once you get to that point, you become free. Literally, you become free. Like in your mind, you start living in a world full of hope. And honestly, I've never felt as good as I feel now. So to me, that's how Bitcoin and being a cycle onwards has literally changed me. And I hope it could do that for a lot more people. I'm confident it can. But you mentioned the word conviction. I think, you got to get to that point, and that is key.
Oh, yeah. So, honestly, look, I think that's good for today. I'm pretty bullish after doing this. Just think, if you weren't in Bitcoin in 2014, you got these ghosts of 2014's past telling you Bitcoin at 20,000 is Bitcoin at 300. If you're in right now, you got the ghost of 2018's past telling you the same thing. Bitcoin at 20,000 is Bitcoin at 3,000. Stack your balls off. You will be telling Bitcoiners in 2026, whatever that bottom is, if there's a bottom, Bitcoin at that price, 200,000, whatever it is Bitcoin at 20K. So
Bitcoin is going to change, right? So I honestly believe, seeing that we're still at like this 5 to 10% or whatever the adoption rate, like we're not near hitting that inflection point yet. The opportunity for it to be life-changing is still there. I think once we reach like a 50 to 70% adoption, the narrative will change. It will more be like, yo, you still got to own it in Bitcoin, because at least it will hold your value. It's still better than a savings account. Maybe the yearly or year-over-year percentages, or CAGR or whatever you call it, will be lower, but they will still be worthwhile to just save in Bitcoin, but right now, where we're at right now, you still have that early adopter advantage that can literally change your life. So
look, there's gonna be
no financial advice. Get to conviction.
Yes.
That would be my advice.
Get the conviction.
Everybody's financial situation is different, and do your own research.
And I would say one more thing. Honestly, the way it may play out is there could just be one bull run to rule them all. One bull run that happens where you get hyperinflation in all these G7 countries. You get every major company, Google, Apple, Disney, all these, they all announce that they're buying Bitcoin. Walmart, all of these things, countries are piling in. So that's why I say, like, Bitcoin's been in a bear run since 2009, because whenever this thing happens, which I don't know, maybe that doesn't happen, but it just seems like there will be one bull run to rule them all. And when that one bull run comes, we'll know, because everyone will be buying it, talking about it, can't get enough of it. And then when that's over, then that's over. And now Bitcoin has changed the world. And it'll continue to change the world for centuries and centuries to come. So that's like the beginning of the change. When the money changes from fiat to Bitcoin, that's the bull run of bull runs that we'll have ever seen.
That's your biggest opportunity risk of not owning Bitcoin right there.
Yes.
Very well said. You know, the slowly and then suddenly phase where
Yes.
all of a sudden there's this global consciousness of fiat being seeing fiat for what it really is, you know, when the narrative that has been in play for decades and centuries breaking, and people understanding that, you know, Bitcoin is the better money because it cannot be debased. You know, finally taking money out of the hands of government, people realizing it's the better money, causing a bank run where everybody just wants to flip their dirty fiat or other assets into Bitcoin before, you know, the guy next to them.
Yeah.
Such a scenario would be absolutely chaotic and possibly catastrophic for a lot of people. Especially the ones who are too late then, you know, because they might be left with nothing, have to start all over again. But yeah, it seems extreme. It could be extreme, but the fact is, it's still a plausible scenario. So we gotta, be ready for everything. All right, Sean, appreciate this talk.
Yes, sir.
As always, you know, honestly, like, I love these talks. I love that we get to hang out. I know there's a lot of plebs out there. For the few that are listening to this, you know, like, we happen to be talking about it on stream, but, you know, we know these conversations are there off stream as well. You know, I advise anybody, go find yourself another Bitcoin buddy, get on a voice call. If there's somebody on Twitter that, you know, there's other, you know, sometimes other people are just like more shy than you. Just reach out to them, say you want to jump on a voice call, have these conversations. It's the best that you can do, because going at this journey alone is hard enough. If you go at it together, it's I really appreciate you, Sean. That's what it comes down to.
Hey, I appreciate you too, man. Plebs strong together. So don't forget, Larry Lepard joins the Meme Factory podcast this Thursday, 7:30 p.m. live. Don't miss. He's a gold bug, but gold bug turned Bitcoiner. He's still old. He still owns some gold, and we're gonna call him out on that. So also remember, what you see here, what you hear here, when you leave here, don't just let it stay here. Please share, like, subscribe, let your friends know, get some more conviction. Let them know about Bitcoiner's Guide. Sean and Plan Marcus are doing it. As for Bitcoiner's Guide, episode 29 from Plan Marcus and Big Sean, we're over and out. Peace.
Hasta luego.